welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. As you see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today in the usual late night episode, I suppose. I don't want this bit to become a normal Animal Crossing. I've just been like pretty, busy and tired recently, and I haven't had not much opportunity, but I've been a bit busy, I suppose, with regards to actually having time for recording. I've actually like sort of burned through my backlog a little bit, which is, I would say suboptimal. Most of the time it's because I normally record on weekends to build up a backlog, but I didn't because I was busy this weekend and last weekend. But good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 11:25 p.m. on Monday, October 30th, 2023. So I might record some Railbound today, I don't know. And maybe tomorrow I'll record some... Oh, I need to do a new thumbnail of a game. I might as well just say it now. You can have a little spoiler, I suppose. As I often say, it's your treat for actually watching Animal Crossing episodes, as you get little spoilers, not spoilers, you get little teasers for what the future series are. The current planned series after Tunic is Okami, which is, it's quite an old game now, I think. It's like 2010, maybe? I was going to say 2008, but I'm not sure about that. Sounds too old. Okami game. I can't even type properly. 2006, it is even older. Okay, should have gone with 2008 as my initial guess. But yeah, it's a game based off like the goddess Amaterasu from Japanese mythology. I don't really know much about her. She's like the goddess of a sun or something in Shinto religion. But she's like a wolf or something. I don't really know, but basically it's quite an acclaimed game, and it's sort of like a, I'm not going to say it's a classic necessarily, but it's certainly got its own, maybe it's a cult classic. It's got its own following, and it's a game that I'm only really aware of because of Marvel vs. Capcom, where I used to play as a character, because she had a very cool stance switching playstyle, is all I remember. And that was basically exactly how my thought process went when I played Marvel vs. Capcom with like a family friend who owned it. It was just like, I don't know who any of these superheroes or characters are, but this one's a dog, and that seems pretty cool, so I'm going to play as a dog. Which is, straightforward logic, and yeah, that's it. So I've had this game for ages. I think I've actually bought it maybe like a decade ago or something, and I just never played it. So now is an interesting time to sort of revisit a classic, especially because I feel like we've been on an upsurge of playing a lot more newer games, right? Let's visit some older ones again. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that today because that will give away the Animal Crossing title of what we're playing. But yeah, what I was actually going to touch upon today, I don't know if I'm actually going to full on talk about it, but if there's any time to do it, I suppose it's now, the lead up to Halloween, is Fear and Hunger, which is not a game I've played, so I'm not going to title this episode Fear and Hunger or anything like that. But it's a game that I've come into knowledge about, I suppose, recently. It was actually a couple of weeks ago, I think. Maybe a month ago, I saw a post on Arshos Games, which is one of the few subreddits which I actually sort of browse for discussions. But it was like a blog post by someone rating all the Fear and Hunger enemies or something. And you might be like, what are you talking about? Well, you could just Google Fear and Hunger, but I will warn you, it's not. It's quite I'm not sure if explicit game is the right word, but it's very sort of body horror and gross looking game, imagine Binding of Isaac, except for Binding of Isaac is a cartoon, this is pushing it further as if it was an adult cartoon or something. It's not, it's like a sort of, yeah, I guess it is kind of horror-esque, right? It's a horror game, like a survival, well, okay. The reason I talk about it is because it's very interesting. It's basically as I understand the discussions on it, it's an incredibly cruel game. And not necessarily cruel in the sense, well, I mean, it is kind of cruel in the sense of in a humanitarian sense, I suppose. But I meant cruel as in a punishing game, because people often talk about punishing games, like Dark Souls or whatever, games which are just unforgiving, relentless, etc., and you get games which are super challenging and difficult, mechanical, technical, precision games, and then it's sort of Fear and Hunger is a sort of game in between, not maybe in between the two, but it's as I've heard it described as an incredibly cruel and unforgiving, extremely punishing game, where, I mean, from what I can tell, it kind of looks like an RPG, like a dungeon crawler sort of RPG thing, except for it's insanely cruel. I actually just watched a Super Bunny Hop episode about it, which is he's not a new YouTuber, which I've discovered. He's a YouTuber I've known about for a while, and I think I've watched some of his videos. Like he made one like I think about Japanese arcade. No, pachinko or something like that. I can't remember one of them, and I thought they were pretty cool. And then I rediscovered them again recently because I don't know. Was it Fear and Hunger was the first video I watched? No, I think it was a Junji Ito thing. Because I just sort of like had that vibe. You know, it's Halloween time. You know, I was getting recommended horror-esque, I suppose, videos. And I saw his video about Junji Ito stuff, and I watched it, and I was like, yeah, you know, there's a good like in-depth analysis. It's a sort of video essay style, which I'm not sure necessarily on the legitimacy of all his claims of it, and like, but it's a thing where he's definitely put in the time for being able to tell an engaging story at the very least. I don't mean that in like a demeaning way or anything like that. I just mean that's like his videos are entertaining to watch, but I can't like comment on the veracity of his things in the first place. But I'm sure they are very well researched, and I've not really watched enough of his videos to make that much of a passing judgment. But he made a video on Fear and Hunger, which, you know, as I said, I saw about it in a blog post. I'm not going to spoil anything in the game for you, but I saw in a blog post which rated all the enemies in the game from like on how like horrifying they were from like in a horror sense, and I looked at the thing and I was like, this looks like a game I would never play. But it was also a thing I was like, I've never heard of this game before, you know. And normally I'm quite curious when I've never heard of a game before in the first place. Obviously I try and look into it, and maybe it'll be like some very unknown indie game. But like I was reading the comments about it on a Reddit thread or something, and it was like, oh, people were like, it's like an underrated gem or something. I was like, what's going on with this game? And I was reading the descriptions of this blog post in the first place, and I was like, whoa, this sounds like a weird game. It sounds like I'm not even sure if it's like Eldritch horror sort of, because when you say Eldritch horror, people think of like Call of Cthulhu, that sort of thing, which this doesn't seem to be that sort of thing, but there's sort of like a undeniable inhuman terror about the game in the first place, and the enemy designs. They are grotesque in a way that feels befitting, I suppose, of the nature of its game. But basically we just like got from it, you know, especially after watching the video, is it's basically an incredibly cruel, punishing game, which, you know, on first glance it kind of looks like an RPG. You go around, you try and fight enemies, except for you try and fight your first enemy, and then it like immediately ends your life. in the TikTok terms, immediately unalives you. I also found out recently that people really don't like the word unalive. I think it's really funny. I think it's quite a funny word, you know. Obviously it was made to like dodge around like censorship and that sort of things, and people, you know, are just like, why would you say, you know, instead of saying kill, you could just say like defeat or anything like that, or dies or perishes, etc, etc. Why do you have to say unalive? It's so cringe. I don't know, I find unalive a really funny word, so I'm going to continue using it just for the funsies of it. Perhaps it's a reflection of who I am, the fact I say funsies as well, but yeah, you like immediately get unalived by the separation of your vital organ of your head from your body, which is, you know, insane, from just like fighting the first enemy. And it was an really interesting watch, because Fear and Hunger has ended up being a game which I'm very curious about, I suppose. I'm not sure I'm like super into grotesque horror or anything like that, but there's a latent curiosity about the interesting nature of the game in the first place. But I can say with absolute certainty it's a game I have no interest in playing whatsoever. Because that's how I understand it. It's basically a game at its core, from what I can see, distilling it down to its core, like macro level principles, is the fact that it's a game about discovery and exploration, just through a very grotesque horror filter, and the most punishing way to learn, I suppose, which is by restarting. If anything, it's kind of like a roguelite, except for all the things you take on from, well, roguelite, not roguelike. Yeah, roguelite, because each run starts new. As I understand, you don't take anything over, and you basically just try the same thing over and over again to try and rescue this person from a dungeon. But with every single step, with every single death, with every single restart, where you die like increasingly in very sort of immediate ways, you learn more and more about the game. And as I understand it, it sort of becomes like an immersive sim in a way, where you have to be very smart, I suppose, about the way you actually progress. Because it's a sort of game like one on first description. When I heard about it, I heard it as that unforgiving, you know, RPG when someone was like, oh yeah, I played it and I fought the first enemy and they immediately just one-shot me and I died. And I was like, that does not sound fun in the slightest. But watching that Super Bunny Hop video actually does enlighten me. to a sense, I watch it and I'm like, I can see why people would like this game, and you know, to an extent that even I'm like curious about it, but I know I would never play it because it's not the type of gameplay I like, and it's not even necessarily the grotesque horror part of it which puts me off. I would say I'm indifferent to it. It's not my favourite aesthetic, grotesque horror, but I can, I suppose, appreciate some of the more peculiar or more interesting designs, I suppose, when it comes to it. I'm just kind of mostly curious about like the design, the gameplay elements, I suppose, which are inherent to it in the first place. You know, there's a lot of very interesting choices, I suppose, within the game itself, which makes it like incredibly cruel and incredibly unforgiving, incredibly punishing game to play in the first place. Again, not something I would want to subject myself to, because, as I say, a key part of progressing in this game is dying over and over and over again, learning something new maybe each time and then carrying on. Except for, it seems like, unlike Celeste, where, you know, you die in a level, I mean, you just like immediately respawn, you're at it again, you know, like Super Meat Boy style with those rapid fire sort of attempts on things. It seems like a much more of a slow burn, a slow grind. Oh yeah, it was also full moon today. Let's Google. Full moon today? November 27th. I guess it's not a full moon, or maybe. What is today full moon? September 29th. No, what? When is the next full moon? Can I? 28th of October. It's actually 2 days ago. That's crazy. It's a hunter's moon. Sorry, drinking some water. What was I going to say? Yeah, I don't know. It's just a very curious game to sort of observe, is how I describe it. It's a game I'm insanely curious about, but it's not a game I want to ever subject myself to. Like, I look at it and be like, I don't know why I'm trying to sort of like justify like my explanations. You probably either understand or you don't. Where it's the sort of thing where it's like, this game is this is so interesting to me, but I don't want to play this game in the slightest. I'm just curious about its existence and its choices overall. It's sort of thing where, you know, a game I'd only want to digest through video essays rather than, you know, actually gameplay, let's play, or a playthrough myself or anything like that. Yeah, and I really don't know what else to say about it. I mean, look it up if you want, or, you know, watch a Super Bunny Hop video if you want to see what all the fuzz, buzz, that's the word, is about, because I feel like I did a really good job on selling it. Again, I would never play it, but still, you might like that sort of game. Like, I can certainly see why it's become popular. And there's a decent chunk of people who, you know, like that sort of self-discovery. And I like that sense of discovery in a game. You know, I love it in Tunic and that sort of thing. You know, I mean, I just played 100% in Tunic. Of course I love that sense of discovery, that puzzle sort of element and figuring things out. I just guess I know myself, I would not like it in the way that Fear and Hunger presents it, which is in the having to restart over and over and over again without all the lack of progress. And the sort of like, it's almost designed to be like a Sisyphean task, but not quite Sisyphean, because you can actually reach the top. Just like pushing a boulder uphill is a very arduous task. That's a better word, which is not really something I want to subject myself to. But no, it's a very curious game to be sort of like relentlessly unforgiving, punishing games. Like the way that Super Bunny Hop, like, I think describes it, is that there's like two categories, like challenging games like Celeste, which are, you know, technically difficult to like execute or whatever, or the difficulty is very high, and there's punishing games which, you know, the cost of failure is incredibly high, things like Dark Souls, etc, etc. And this is a game which sort of does both, which is why he describes it as like a cruel game. You know, it's an incredibly difficult game, I suppose, to, you know, iterate and learn upon, and it's incredibly punishing. You know, the most punishing thing you could do when playing a game is just straight up, you know, deleting your progress. Reminds me of that game ages ago, which people were like, oh, you know, if you die too much in this game, it will delete your save file, and that turned out to not actually be true, or something. But I don't know why that randomly came to mind, but it did. I might be when I wear things like this. Oh, that's very cute, Lily. Yeah, so that's basically what Fear and Hunger, I suppose, entails. um, it's a bit hard to talk about the game because I think the things which interest me most about the game end up being kind of spoilers, and I don't want to ruin that for you because it does seem like a sort of game where it's like you do get a lot more out of it by not being spoiled on like mechanics and surprises, etc., from it. But it's interesting, you know. I don't really know where this game came from. Like, it sort of just felt like it popped out of nowhere in popularity. I'm not sure what exactly sparked its recent growth or something, because apparently it's a game which has been out for a long while, and the sequel has been released very recently as well. But it seems to have a strong community around it, which is cool to see, you know. I'm absolutely not going to, you know, diss on any community forming around something which we all enjoy together. That's kind of the whole point of it in the first place. I'm also surprised Celeste isn't here today, but because it's such a clear night, but maybe the October days just generally are. Hello, Phoebe. What other cruel games have I played, I suppose, in these last 4 minutes? I know, like, is I Want to Be the Guy, would that be considered, like, a cruel game as well? Maybe. It's an incredibly punishing game, certainly. And it's actually one I've not beaten. Not mis- Wait, what was this again? Excuse me? I can't use this item right now. Oh, so if I don't return it, if I don't return it after a day, I can't do anything about it? What do you mean, what was this again? It's actually, I can't return this anymore. Just because it's been a day. Animal Crossing, what was this again? Pouch. It's a trash item. Failing to return a lost pouch in the time when it is first found as a lost item. The item cannot be sold. Wow. That's crazy. We forget what it is. Can you imagine that? You lose something like super important to you, like your journal, your diary or something. A friend picks it up and, you know, doesn't return it after 1 day. And then they're just like, what is this again? What do I do with this? How do I get rid of this? How do Animal Crossing get rid of what was this again? Do I just drop it again? Leaving it in the trash can or taking it to Tim and Tommy and Nook's Cranny. Do I have a trash can? I guess I'll give it to Timmy and Tommy. Can you imagine that? Like, this super important journal or diary or thing which is really personal to you. Your friend just forgets to return it to you for 1 day. And the only thing they can do with it is just toss it in the trash. They can't return it to you anymore. That's crazy. You know what? That's actually a really good idea. I should put a trash can next to Timmy and Tommy's. That seems like something that would actually thematically fit. Why don't we do that now? It's so rare that we actually do any changes in Animal Crossing, but the situation doesn't really come up all that often, but that seems like a perfect thing to actually put down. That's the wrong button. Is this how we put things in storage again? I don't really remember. Okay, let's go find a trash can. Not really sure why trash cans appear. Here we go. Steel trash can? Garbage can? Garbage pail? Let's do garbage pail. Yeah, I don't know, cruel games. I think I Want to Be the Guy is probably the cruelest game I've played. I've not really played a lot of punishing games in general. It's mainly just because I don't really want to do that when I play a game. I want to play, I like challenging games. That's definitely no surprise there. You know, I play things like Celeste and what have you. But when a game, I suppose, becomes annoying, I guess, actually, now I think about it, I very much just don't like punishing games in the slightest. Sorry, Fauna's Diary. I don't like games which reset my progress and that sort of thing, especially to a very extreme degree, which is maybe why I haven't really ever tried to check out Dark Souls and that sort of thing. Maybe it doesn't like appeal to me in that sort of sense, but I don't really know. I've never really thought about this, but any cruel games. What are cruel games out there? Cruel games. Cruel video games. Manhunt. Hatred. Okay, wait, wrong sort of cruel. Most punishing games. Most punishing video games of all time. Okay, this is where we go to Reddit. PC gaming. Getting Over It. Interesting. Dwarf. Getting Over It is also one I've never played. But it's one actually one of my friends. She super likes it. And and you know, I often have discussions with this friend. And basically, now I think about it, very much boiled down to I'm very much someone who likes the destination. not necessarily, the journey is not always the most important part for me. Or she's very much someone who's like all about the journey. The destination doesn't really matter. And I suppose that's something which people often say about the journey should be the thing which matters. And I suppose the appreciation of a journey comes with the destination at the end. I like the satisfaction of something of it rounding up, and if a journey is too tiresome, then maybe I don't want to participate in that way. I don't know, because I feel like there's always a disdain, and this is definitely a discussion for another time. Maybe we'll go into tomorrow, we'll see. But anyway, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been dear darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope we'll see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.